Hello everybody, Nicholas Hopper with All American Manufacturing and Canvas Works. This is video number 2 about the sewing machines that we use in our little shop here today. Today we're going to talk about the Singer 144W304. It's a 30-inch long arm industrial sewing machine. It's kind of the mainstay machine that we have here in the shop that we use for most of our work. Purchased it in 2019. Did a little work to get it back up and running, mostly cleaning it out and making sure every bits and pieces were in up working order. It turned over smoothly. It was an easy machine to get back up and running, and was put into operation right away, and been used ever since. So this is the Singer 144-304. It's a 30-inch long arm industrial sewing machine. Best timeline late 40s. Maybe early 50s when this one was produced. It does not have a reverse function like the console does. Very typical of machines of that era. It wasn't until the 50s when they started incorporating the reverse feature on these. Pulley wheel at the far end. It does have a center wheel at the work area. Making it easy for you to manually move the needle in the up and down position. It's clutch driven, so you can see it's loose right now and there's no movement of the needle. Press in, allows for the movement, and as you start to sew, the clutch will release and will be free. Unlike newer machines where you can manually reverse it by turning the wheel, because there's no reverse, you cannot do that. And somebody had painted a nice arrow to remind you that you can only go one direction when moving the needle. The bobbin is located here. It turns on a vertical axis where the bobbin itself is sat in there horizontally. It uses a very large size bobbin. We'll cover the different sizes between all our machines here in the shop. Unlike the console, the axis is horizontal and the bobbin is vertically based on this side of the needle underneath the table. You have to remove the plate to get to it on the console. This plate doesn't do anything, it's just a solid casting underneath it. Again, this is our main machine. Love the space that we have here. The maximum stitch length that this machine can do is 2.5 stitches per inch. Unlike the console, there's no easy way to adjust stitch length. It's the only downfall of this machine. In order to adjust the stitch length, there's 2 things you have to do. Number 1, you have to lock the top assembly, top of the arm itself, have to lock it in place. So by doing that, you'll turn the hand wheel until this can lock into place, and you turn it and it locks it down. Now this assembly is no longer able to move when you turn the wheel. You also have to do the same thing with the bottom half. Usually once the top locks in, you press down and this locks the bottom half. You turn the wheel by hand, you make sure that nothing moves, and then you turn the hand wheel towards you to increase the stitch length, or turn it away from you to decrease the stitch length. So it's a guessing game when you do this, as there's no way to know what your stitch length is until you can put a piece of material through the sewing machine and count your stitch length. So it's a guessing game until you can get to that correct stitch. So with this machine, once I find the stitch that I need, that pretty much I use all the time, it stays at that stitch length. These are the 3 bobbin sizes that we use on our machines. To the far left is for the Singer 111, which we'll cover in our next video. The next one in the middle is for the console 206, and then the far right is the Singer 144. So you can definitely see the size capacity difference between the 3 machines. So this machine has 2 pedals. Your normal stop-go, basically. Harder you push, the faster the machine will go. The second one is your lifting and lowering your foot. So as we press down on the pedal, it lifts. You let go of it, it drops. If you want to lock it up in place, Machine has this arm here. Once you lift it, you bring it over, release, it now locks the machine. So your foot pedal comes up through the bottom of the table, through the bottom of the machine. There's a chain that connects to here. This runs the length and controls your arm, or your foot when you lift it up and down. And this is your locking mechanism with this handle. Locks it in the up position when the handle is turned in this direction. Sewing with this machine is an absolute blast. For the size of the machine, it's still like running the console or a smaller, maybe a home style. It will just about sew through anything you put underneath it. There's just a quick run of the stitch. Lock the foot up and remove the thread. Cut the thread. So one of the questions that people have on a machine like this that doesn't have a reverse is, how do you lock your thread at the end of a stitch or the beginning of a stitch? So there's a couple things. Depends on where the stitch is going to start or end. If the stitch ends and it's going to be folded over itself, you don't have to worry about going back over it to lock it in. But back then, looking at this original late Willys MB top seat cushion cover, you'll see, if you look at here, these what looks like loose threads over the stitching. So back tacking is the term. It's going back over your work. So in a newer machine, you would reverse back over it, maybe go back forward one more time to lock that stitch. On an older machine, you could either turn the piece around to stitch back over it, or you do this, and we'll show you how that works. Okay, so we're going to start our stitch, lower the foot, stitch forward. At this point, we want to lock that stitch into place. So we got to make sure we lift the needle all the way in its up position, allow for the thread to move through the system. You lift your feet, you move back over the work, make sure you line it up over your stitch as close as possible, drop your foot, and you start stitching again. Same thing when you want to end it, make sure everything's lifted up, slide back over your work, drop your feet, stitch over it. Get to the end, pull your work, and you've now back tacked over your thread. So here's the finished product. It's hard to see because I've stitched over it so well, but here is that loose thread, and you have two sets of stitches over top of it. Same thing here. There's that loose thread and the two sets of stitches over top of it. So that's how you would lock your stitch in on a vintage machine without a reverse. So that's going to cover it today on the Singer 144-304. Again, it's our mainstay machine. It's what we use for most of the work that we do here in the shop. On our next video, we're going to cover the Singer 111W113, and you're going to see a lot of similarities to it and the console that we showed in our first video. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you on the next one.